One of the things that I often hear is, oh, though that's someone else's fault. Oh, the reason that's happening to me has got nothing to do with me, or, I have no control over my reality. Someone else is controlling it for me, and there's always this finger pointing outside. About President Trump, or it's about some politician, or some other person, boss at work, ex-boyfriend, or whoever. People are always projecting most of the time outside, and the reasons for that are very simple. First of all, a vast majority of people do not really understand what they are. And what I mean by that is, most people define themselves by a very limited number of variables, like their name, their age, where they come from, and so on, right? and they do that, and they think, oh, well, that's it. I've done my bit, this is who I am, and this is, what I think, and so on. And yet, when you get up close and personal and ask someone, like, really closely, and say, hey, look, I don't care about your name, or what country or religion you have, or whatever, or what your hair colour is, or your skin colour is. What are you? What is going on now when you're talking to me? What are you listening to? And who is behind that? Who's creating that? Who's orchestrating that? And most people then start to think, what's are you talking about? Like, well, of course, it's just me listening with my ears. It's like, well, no, but where does that come from? And I think most people just get stuck there. They're like, it suddenly dawns on them they don't actually really know who they are. And at the same time, because they're finger pointing outside all the time, they're creating this idea of separation between them and the outside world. But I always like to come back to that question. It's like, well, who's experiencing the outside world? Well, of course you are. It's not, you're the one that's perceiving it that way, right? And without your brain perceiving the world that way, it wouldn't be the way that you see it. Do you see what I'm trying to say? The only reason that you see the world around you the way that you do is because that's the way that you see it. It's not the way that someone else sees it. It's not the way that your mother sees it, your boyfriend or your girlfriend, your wife, your husband, your best mate, your boss at work. They don't see it that way. Only you can ever see it that way. And so that brings in an interesting question. So if you're the only one that can see it that way, then aren't you the only one that's creating it that way? Do you see what I'm saying? So all this finger pointing, if we go back to that, where does that come from? Where does the object of your finger pointing come from? I hope I'm starting to mess with your noodle a bit now, because the point is, this is to sort of flip everything on its head. Most people go, oh, well, no, it's a person out there, right? It's that guy there, or that guy. But where does the perception of that person come from? Where's that image get generated in the first place? By you. So, and you're thinking, well, okay, so what? So what if I perceive them that way, but they're still acting that way and they're still independent from me? But how do you know that they're independent from you? How can you truly say 100%, using science, hard science if you like, and other methods, can you prove to me that the world outside you is separate from you? You can't. Initially, you'll give me a load of Newtonian physics BS about, oh, well, there's a this and a that, and there's a me and a him, and so on and so forth, and there's my arm, and there's a table over there, or whatever. We're separate. And there's this country which is separate from that. But after a while, when you get down into the physics of it, when you start getting down beyond the visible level that you can see with your eyes on a daily basis, science shows us that, in all honesty, nothing is quite the way that you see it when you're visualizing it with your eyes and interpreting that vision. In fact, it's quite the opposite. What you're perceiving is actually just decoded images of what your brain has processed in 0.5 seconds, which is like it brings together like a symphony of information and then produces that symphony. So you get all these images collapsed in 0.5 seconds, produced in your head, and you see it out of your eyes. But all the images you ever see are coming straight from your head. They're not coming from anywhere else, because it's your brain that processes the reality around you. So again, it always comes back to you. Do you see what I'm saying? And on top of that, The other thing I was saying earlier is when you're perceiving the reality, because you're perceiving it as is, the way that you see it, you're not making a separation with it, in all honesty. You create 3D reality, you perceive it with your mind, but you actually, that's just an illusion that you've created for yourself through your eyes. Do you see what I'm saying? Does it make sense? Even if just a little bit. Does it get you thinking? Does it start messing with your head? Because it should mess with your head. If it starts messing with your head, it means you're waking up. If it's not messing with your head, then you're still way, way asleep. You're still projecting out there. You're still blaming everything else around you for what goes on in your life. And nothing that goes on in your life is separate from you. Nothing that goes on out there is separate from what you are, because it's a transactional relationship. You are transacting with your outside world all the time. There's a constant feedback loop of information going on between you and the reality that you perceive out there. And the reason that happens is because you're it. It's a seamless process. So Newtonian physics is outdated. In fact, it always has been. And what predates it, arguably, like historically, has always been a lot more accurate. The idea that everything is interdynamically connected. And now quantum physics, over the past 50 years, has started to come back to that take on reality. And people like Bohm, for instance, talk about the holographic universe. Everything essentially that you see in the outside world is a part of the whole, and within each thing that you see, including yourself, contains the whole of everything, i.e. the whole universe. Anyway, I'm going to stop there because I could talk for hours about this, but the point is just to get you thinking about how you see things. You may agree or disagree with me, that's absolutely fine. In fact, to be quite honest with you, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm not presenting this information to persuade you that my view is correct. I don't need to do that. I already know what I know. I'm doing it just for the fun of having the opportunity to talk about it. Cheers.